Hi, Nate Ryan here with Calvin Fish, and we're here to talk about Rolex 24 just around the corner, end of January, one of the biggest events in sports car racing, Calvin. And as a result, a lot of driver announcements coming out about who's going to be in this prestigious race on January 30th, 31st, which you can watch on NBC Sports. This past week, Calvin, we heard that former Formula One driver Robert Kubica will run an LMP2, which also just had the addition of 2020 IndyCar Rookie of the Year Rinus Veekay, 2018 Daytona 500 winner Austin Dillon. Both of them will be making their Rolex 24 debuts as well. With many big names already entered in DPI, as we always expect, is it good to see the star power kind of migrating to other classes this year?
I think it is. When you look at the field, Nate, I mean, DPI is so stacked, really established names already there. So the opportunities for these drivers to jump in a DPI machine have not been there. So LMP2 cars, it's a really quick prototype machine. And if you think about it, just going back a couple of years ago, Colin Brown and John Bennett almost stole the championship with an LMP2 car. So the cars are very quick. They're not going to be viable for an overall win. But nonetheless, I think these three drivers that you mentioned are probably at Daytona for very different reasons. If you think about Austin Dillon, would love to follow up on that Daytona 500 win by winning on the road course there at the Rolex 24. So probably a bucket list item for him. Also, with so many road courses now on the NASCAR schedule, just great experience. Then you think about Rinus Veekay, superstar on the IndyCar circuit, Rookie of the Year last year. The key is with some of these series, Nate, as you know, not much testing is allowed. So for these drivers to knock the rust off in the offseason, get a number of miles under their belt, great for him to raise his profile. And then Robert Kubica, what a star he is. He came up in the same lane as Lewis Hamilton. Lewis really felt he was the man he's going to have to beat for world championships. Obviously, with that rally accident, his career went on a different track for a number of years, but he's back. And I think some of these drivers, Nate, are really thinking about the future. Where is their future? Could it be in sports car racing? Big announcements last year with Porsche and Audi committing to LMDH. They're going to be on the grid in 2023. You know, Robert Kubica has that on his radar.
And I'm struck, Cal, that you just mentioned there, Kubica from Formula One, obviously Dillon from NASCAR, Veekay from IndyCar. I think a real feather in the cap for IMSA that all of these drivers from various disciplines are coming to Daytona to essentially start their 2021 season, that they view sports cars as a great vehicle and platform for that.
Well, I think it's always been the ultimate race of champions. I mean, I think everyone looks at this event, they're either intrigued, they just want to be there, they want to get their season started early. And I think anyone who comes, whether it's Fernando Alonso, talks about it with high regard. So I think it's really opened up the door for other drivers from different disciplines to try and get here. And as I said, there's a number of different agendas that they're trying to tick.
Yeah, you mentioned, Calvin, LMP2 obviously is not going to challenge for the overall victory, we think. I mean, who knows? It would take extraordinary circumstances for something like that to happen. But in recent years, the focus has been, I think, a little bit more on the fact that the series has been down a little bit on car count. Is this, do you think, a good sign for LMP2 of momentum that they have some of these big names that are coming in for the Rolex 24?
I think it's great, Nate. I mean, the ingredients have been there for this class to really provide a lot of fireworks. It's just we haven't had the entry with the economics in place. So this year we could be close to 10 cars, maybe half a dozen on a full-time basis. So it's going to give us an added focal point. Yes, we'll be focused on the battle for overall with the DPI cars, but I think P2, and also we got the addition of LMP3 this year. So probably about half the field. It should be a pretty even split. We're anticipating about 50 cars on the grid this year, probably half in the prototype ranks and half in the GT field.
Yeah, it's great to hear, Calvin. Obviously, car counts are up from last year, starting off with the season opener and a new class as well of LMP3. And we, speaking again of driver announcements, we just heard recently that Joao Barbosa, a former Rolex 24 multi-time winner, going to be in the LMP3 class. What do you see developing with Barbosa going to LMP3?
Well, first of all, I think it's great to see Barbosa on the grid. He's a quality guy, two-time champion. He's won the Rolex 3 times overall, I think, plus a class victory. So the game changed for him. He's in his mid-40s now, and I think he was really the backbone and the benchmark for the Action Express Racing team. Then a couple of years ago, Nate, he had a couple of accidents, kind of got off his groove a little bit, and suddenly the bar has been raised in terms of the quality of the drivers in that category. So it's great to see him have an opportunity. Sean Creech is someone that he worked with with way back in 2 decades ago. When you look at their pit box, they've got Kevin Doran, who's won Daytona 5 times in various forms, whether it's a car owner, a team owner, or even a constructor. So they've got a lot of experience there, and I think it's great for Joao to really lead that team into this new category. You couldn't have a better guy for that role.
Yeah, another guy who's great to see him back, Calvin, is Colton Herta, returning for his 3rd consecutive Daytona Rolex 24 and returning for the 3rd straight year in a BMW. But a little bit of a different twist this year. He's moving to the GTD class after winning the Daytona Rolex 24 in 2019 in the GTLM. And obviously, we know he's so quick in the IndyCar Series. He set fastest lap in the 2019 Rolex 24 at Daytona. So what do you think the transition here is for Colton Herta going from GTLM, which obviously a little bit quicker than GTD, a bigger field of cars, but still being in that BMW? What will that adjustment be like for Colton Herta?
Well, I think nothing really phases Colton. He's an immense talent. He's just got that raw ability, right? So he stepped in that GT Le Mans machine and won first time out. So he's staying with the BMW brand, which is great. He's running with the Turner Motorsports team, which have so much experience. This will be Will Turner's 400th event with BMW machines. So he's got Billy Oberlin on the squad. So a lot of factors there to really draw from. But I think the 2 critical factors will be getting used to ABS brakes. That's very tricky. The nuance of that compared with the regular braking system that you have on a GT Le Mans car will be something with limited seat time. And also the traffic factor. He's used with a GT Le Mans machine passing those 20 GTD cars. Now he's going to have all of those prototypes and the GT Le Mans cars and maybe the LMP3 cars trying to find their way by him. So it's going to be an adjustment, but I think he's up to it. And don't be surprised to see him get another Rolex 24 win in a couple of weeks. Yeah, and we saw some more GTD news today, Calvin, and co-worker Townsend Bell getting some good news. He's going to be in a Vassar Sullivan car for the Rolex 24 at Daytona, also joined by former Corvette driver, really a legend of the GTLM class for the last several years, Oliver Gavin. What's it mean to have Townsend Bell and Oliver Gavin in GTD? Well, so much experience, so much speed still. I mean, Townsend still gets up on the wheel and gets the job done. So great to see him back behind the wheel of the number 12 machine. We won't see him full time like we did last year, alongside Frankie Montecalvo, with Veach now taking up that role. And Ollie Gavin, that one surprised me. I didn't see that one coming, Nate. I'm not sure about you. So Ollie Gavin, he's not running with Corvette Racing, but he'll be on the grid, and he can add to his resume as well. So 2 quality guys. You couldn't have better guys to put in there for these big enduros. Yeah, kind of a nice way, I think, Calvin, for Oliver Gavin to go out, because I think we thought when we saw him exit at Sebring at the end of the 2020 season that was it. It didn't quite go the way maybe we would have wanted to put a bow on his career. And now he gets another chance in a different class at the Rolex. Yeah, and I think I'll agree with you there. I mean, Sebring, they did it right. They painted the bridge with, thanks, Ollie, and all those type of things, but the race didn't go his way. So you hate to go out that way. So who knows? Maybe there's other opportunities. It's a little bit tricky with the GTD category, because in the other enduros, you're only allowed 1 pro. Daytona's the only event where you can have 2 pros alongside your regular season lineup. So opportunities will be limited, but hopefully we see Ollie Gavin back for a few more one-offs, and I'm excited. It'll be great to see him on the grid. And you mentioned, Calvin, we've got Porsche investigating and committing to the new LMDH class, which will replace DPI, but still a couple of years down the road. They will be exiting GTLM this year, where, of course, they've had some great rivalries, great battles with BMW and Corvette racing, which we just mentioned. Oliver Gavin is certainly a part of that. But some news this week on the GTLM front that we'll have a privateer team in WeatherTech Racing announcing that they're going to bring a Porsche into the GTLM. Not going to have factory support. We'll have driver Cooper McNeil with a rotating cast of drivers. Seems like, we were talking to the Corvette drivers this morning. Seems like some good news here for GTLM to have another full-time entry in that class, even though it's not a factory car, still to have a Porsche in that series or in that class to give the GTLM Corvettes some more competition to race. I think it's huge. I mean, we knew that Proton were going to come for an entry at the 24, but Cooper McNeil talked about bringing Ferrari to GT Le Mans, making the step up from GTD, where he's really improved his game dramatically over the last couple of years. He's got a lot more experience now under his belt. He's really getting the job done. This is a big step. He recognizes that. He's running a similar class over in Europe. They call it GTE Pro. He's run at Le Mans a couple of times in that class, so he knows what he's stepping up to. I think the support from Porsche will be immense. They're going to be very happy to see their brand still represented in GT Le Mans. As you mentioned, a rotating door probably of different Porsche professionals alongside him, but everyone's going to have the speed. And I think maybe this is the domino effect. We're unsure what BMW are going to be doing exactly for this year. They're at the Rolex. We anticipate the Michelin Endurance Cup plus maybe one or two others, but suddenly that second manufacturer that being there on a full-time basis, you got Ferrari at the Rolex with Ricci as well. Is that enough to tip the scales? Maybe BMW rethink what they're thinking in terms of a limited program for 2021.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing Nick Tandy talk about that this morning, Calvin. He said that he's moving over to Corvette after having such a great run at Porsche, and he said that they haven't necessarily given up on BMW maybe coming back full time. So maybe how things transpire at the Rolex or Sebring, maybe that would kind of push a manufacturer like BMW into making that full season commitment midstream.
Well, I think the key is that they've still got skin in the game. That's the important thing. You hate to see a manufacturer go away. It's hard to get them back. So they know how important North America, the market, is to BMW. That's why they're staying in the game. They want to keep the team together with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan there. So keep a lot of the key personnel. You don't want to let them go, then try and rehire. So I think they've got plans. We don't know what they are. LMDH, maybe with Audi and Porsche going there. That's really the domino effect in that class as well. There's a lot of talk, Nate, as you know, about GT convergence moving forward. Maybe we'll lose the GT Le Mans class and have just GT3 machinery, which we utilize in the GTD class, but have a Pro class and a Pro-Am class. So lots to be decided here over the next 6 months and how it relates to our 2022 season even.
Well, one more thing that I want to talk to you about, Calvin, at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, another class, the top class. We haven't talked much about DPI yet. And of course, I cover NASCAR full time, have for many years. And I'm not the sports car aficionado that you are. So I'm really intrigued to get your insight on this one. Jimmie Johnson, who, of course, running for Action Express in one entry. Chase Elliott, the reigning NASCAR Cup champion, another entry for Action Express. But the seven-time champion, Jimmie Johnson, will be running with Kamui Kobayashi, Simon Pagenaud, Mike Rockenfeller. And he said something interesting during the Daytona test, Calvin. He said that Jim France and Rick Hendrick, who were both involved with driver selection for this Action Express team, he said that they were really methodical and deliberate about, how Jimmie Johnson would pair with Kobayashi and Pagenaud and Rockenfeller. So I see these all-star cars come up a lot with all these big names, and sometimes they seem to just mesh. And I look at some of the other names that, of course, we're going to have back, like Scott Dixon and Alexander Rossi. And I'm curious from your perspective as a sports car expert and analyst, how do team owners make those decisions that Jimmie talked about with Jim France and Rick Hendrick on which drivers to put together and how they fit together and how you get that chemistry to mesh for a 24-hour race?
Well, I think the first key is ticking very important boxes. One is getting the car right. Well, Cadillac have yet to be beaten at Daytona with the DPI era. And then the team has had so much success there. So those key ingredients are there. Then how do you line up alongside Jimmie Johnson? Well, you need some common ground. If you think about Mike Rockenfeller, he won Le Mans overall. He's won this event overall with the Action Express racing team. Simon Pagenaud, yes, IndyCar is his bread and butter, but he's run a lot of sports car races over the last few years, particularly in the last 3 years with the Acura team, Penske. He's run with Action Express Racing before, so they know the team very well. They know how they click. And then you bring in Kamui Kobayashi, who's gone for 3 straight with the Cadillac chassis. So I think he's really pivotal, in that driver lineup, Nate, in terms of being able to bring to the table, what should this car feel like around this racetrack to be successful? So he's coming over from Wayne Taylor Racing. He's unable to run with Wayne this year because Wayne's moved on to Acura. That's a conflict with Toyota, obviously, who Kamui runs with on the global stage. So I think it's a great addition. I think they're all really cool characters. I think they are really the dark horse for this event because they've got the speed. Jimmie knows the event. He's run it a handful of times. He's finished on the podium a couple of times. So I think they could spring a surprise. They're going to have fun, but it's even more fun when you win. Yeah,
no doubt. And Jimmie has said that, this is definitely on his bucket list. He wants that Rolex 24 overall victory. He's been close a couple of times before, but that's why he's here this year. So Lot to follow there, a lot to continue to follow about the Rolex 24. We'll continue to keep bringing you updates all the way through January 30th and 31st when you can watch the Rolex 24 at Daytona on NBC Sports. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, Motorsports fans, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe before you go for all the latest news and highlights across motorsports.